Welcome to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint from Zero to Hero, Module 3.1, Initial Setup and Advanced Settings. On this video I will present how you can double check if you have the right license to implement MDE, and then how to connect MDE into your Microsoft Intune, and finally all about advanced settings. I want to make sure you have a good understanding of all the key settings you need to configure as a kind of backend configuration before onboarding your devices. Anyway, get ready and let me show how it works. Before I start setting up Defender for Endpoint, it's always a good idea to double check if you have the right license to cover this product. There are a couple of ways to do that. I decided to come into the admin.microsoft.com, and then let me just quickly double check. If I maximize billing, and then over billing I can go over your products. And then if I click in here, is a quick way for me to check what are the license for this tenant. To be honest, on my lab, this is a brand new tenant. I haven't done any work so far on Defender for Endpoint, and this is my goal for this quick video. Yes, as you can see, I should be 100% covered. I have full license for Microsoft 365 E5, and then I can take benefit from Defender for Endpoint P2 that is covered over the Microsoft 365 E5 trial. Okay, that's step number one, simple enough. Now let's go into business. Okay, what I want to do now is to kind of connect my Intune infrastructure into Defender for Endpoint. Now the place where I am is endpoint.microsoft.com, especially if you are kind of new into this tool. Okay, here on the left is, let me go over Endpoint Security. Let me click in there. And actually this is the place where on other videos I'm basically coming to do all the AV configuration, to do the EDR configuration, all these policies from here. But please remember, this tenant is brand new. I haven't done any configuration so far. And then this is why, as a step number one, I need to go over Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Okay, just let me click in there. And now there are a couple of important things to be done from here. One of them is to connect my Defender for Endpoint into Intune and then set some configuration as well. As you can see at the moment, the connection status is unavailable because I haven't done anything. The last synchronization between MDE and Intune is missing because nothing is done so far. And then the place to go is actually from here, configuring Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And step number one is actually to connect my Defender for Endpoint into my Microsoft Intune. Okay, let me click in there. And then there are some other configuration I want to do as well. But anyway, let's go kind of step by step, one step at a time. And okay, now by the time I hit that button, I was redirected to security.microsoft.com. If you are new into the security.microsoft.com, this is the main portal where now Microsoft is kind of bringing all together the main tools when it comes to Defender for Cloud, Cloud App, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, Email and Collaboration, and other bits as well. Okay, here I am. Now let me dive into, as you can see, slowly things have been populated in here. If I click into the devices, let me click in there. Of course, because this is a brand new tenant, at the moment I have nothing, I have no devices connected to there. Initially, the device inventory should come with no devices at all. Okay, at the moment, I just want to make sure, everything is blank. Okay, now if I go over the endpoint vulnerability and management, if I click in there, let me just try to maximize this in here, and then click on, oops, I clicked twice, sorry about that. Yeah, if I click on dashboard, again, this is brand new. I shouldn't be able to get too many kind of interesting information from here because my tenant is brand new. Okay, now let me just go, yeah, as you can see, zero as exposure is brilliant. But anyway, now the other place I should go is over settings. And then if I click in there, and then here is the place, as I was saying a few seconds ago, security.microsoft.com is the main portal that combines all the other security elements in a single place. The Security Center, the Microsoft 365 Defender, Endpoint, and so on. Okay, let me click on Endpoints. Click in here. And then from here, there are some very important configuration to be done. On this video, I won't be able to cover all the configuration because some of them, they are a little bit, let's say, more complex to explain, and I need some other step to be done. But let's go, let's say, to focus on what are the most important ones. Okay, the best place to start is definitely from the advanced features. As you can see, again, one more time, this is a brand new tenant. There are very few options enabled at the moment, and I would advise you to go slowly in here. Let me cover, okay, most of them or all of them, but I would advise, especially if you are setting up in production, take your time, make sure you understand every single option and what is going to happen when you enable this feature. For how could I say, a mature environment where you already did all the proof of concept, you already done all the testing, you are kind of happy with the results so far, and then usually you will be, let's say most likely, you will enable all of them or most of these features. But anyway, let's start one by one. Okay, the first one is automated investigation. As you can see, is on already, and I would really advise to keep this configuration as on. It means every time when there is a kind of threat on the device, the system, thanks to the automated investigation, will be able to block the threat, and then on top of that do a kind of deep dive investigation to see if there is nothing left behind when it comes to exe files, macro, registry key, and so on. I would strongly advise keep it on. The next one is the live response. I will cover this item and I will demo in some other videos, but to keep the story short is when the analyst team, the SOC team, is doing a post-breach analysis, or is kind of just analyzing some of the alerts, if you leave the live response enabled, basically from the portal, those people, they can connect the device, and from there they can run PowerShell script. There are a bunch of commands they can use to do a deep dive and kind of double check if nothing was left behind. The live response for server is kind of the same story, but in this case, if the SOC team is doing an analysis for a server 2012, server 2016, or so on, the same story. If this button is enabled, they can open a console on that server to do a further investigation. Okay, I will leave that on. The next one, that depends on your organization. It means when you have the live response enabled, there are some, how could I say, set stone commands where you can delete file, you can search for file, you can copy files, and so on. But if you enable this option, live response unassigned script execution, as kind of the name suggests, you can have your own script basically upload into that server, and then from there you can run your script to collect some additional information that is not available out of the box from the live response option. Okay, again, that depends your organization. Some companies, they think that could be a little bit dangerous, but from a practical point of view, in terms of investigation, it can be really useful. The next one, that's interesting, restrict correlation to within scope device group. The idea here is the following. You might came across before. Basically, we have alerts and we have incidents. And every time when Microsoft finds alerts, let's say similar alerts, Microsoft can organize those alerts in a single kind of plane of glass, I could say, called incident. And this option is if you want your devices, the alerts from devices, to be correlated only on the device group where that device belongs to, or if the alerts should be correlated as an entire organization. Again, if you have a small organization with a few dozen devices or maybe hundreds of devices, doesn't make that difference. But talking about thousands of devices, maybe you want to keep the correlation within the group, Windows 10 from the finance department, or Windows Server from the database kind of business, and so on. But again, it's up to you. It's not a big deal when it comes to security. It's just a way Microsoft should correlate number of alerts into incidents. The next one, again, I would advise you to first to test and to make sure you can understand the EDR. But usually, or let's say I would advise to set the EDR in a block mode. It means EDR is another component, probably you have seen on my first video when I provide quick information about EDR. And EDR works with the antivirus, together as a multiple layer of blocking bad threats, and then eventually if something slips from the antivirus, DDR can still be able to block malware or whatever a bad threat that's happening. To keep the story short, I would, to maximize the protection from the endpoint, from the Defender for Endpoint, I would advise to keep enable the EDR. Another one is kind of interesting enough, the automatically resolve alerts. Again, especially if you are getting hundreds or maybe thousands of alerts every day or every week, it can be challenging for your security team to do the analysis and eventually close all those alerts one by one. As you can find how to do that in some additional videos. Here, based on all the protection layers and thanks to the automated investigation as well, if you keep that option on, it means if Microsoft is able to block an ransomware or a malware, do the deep dive investigation, and Microsoft is confident enough nothing is left behind and there is no threat for the device or for the organization, you could, if this switch is on, the alert that was generated by that malware, let's say, can be closed automatically. That's just to avoid, some of your analysts to go there and manually to do that. Another option is to allow or block files. This is from the antivirus. Again, to provide maximum protection, I would advise to keep as on. The next one, that's a very important one, the custom network indicators. As you can find in some additional videos, from the indicators configuration, actually is in here somewhere. As you can see in here, from the indicators is the place where we can configure, how could I say, the white and black IP addresses, domain names, and file hashes as well. And then if you enable this option, we are able to go to indicators and say, I don't want anybody to go to, whatever is the bad site.com.ie or whatever, okay? I would advise to keep this option on to give you flexibility for you to block or allow IP addresses, domains, and URLs as well. And please remember, the indicators can be used to block or to allow. Maybe, you are trying a public IP that Microsoft has flagged as bad, but actually is a good IP address based on one of your customers or partners and so on, and then you could whitelist that IP address. I would advise to keep that option enabled. The next one, you might came across this option before, the tamper protection. I would advise to keep it on. This means if eventually a bad hacker managed somehow to connect the device and is trying to downgrade the security level. Downgrade the security level could be try to disable the antivirus, try to downgrade the ASR rules and things like that. If the tamper protection is enabled, I wouldn't say it's impossible to do that, but it's going to be more challenging for anybody to downgrade the security level from the devices, including, as I said, antivirus, EDR, and so on. A good option to keep on. The next one is to show user details. That's kind of not really related to security. It's more if you want to allow, it's kind of related to security, sorry, from the alerts or when the people is doing the investigation. if the details from user picture, the username, the title, department, you want that information from Active Directory to be presented or not. Some companies might not be, let's say, comfortable in presenting all that information for some of the users. Otherwise, just keep it on. The next one is in regards to the communication via Skype for business. I know in these days people are using Teams instead of Skype. You could disable. I will keep enable on my tenant. Okay, now the next few options are very important. I would advise you, before taking anything on here, just make sure you have the license for those products. The first one is the Microsoft Defender for Identity integration. It means if you really want, and you should, if you are already using Microsoft Defender for Identity, I would 100% recommend to enable this option. That allows, as the name suggests, everything that is happening on the device to be shared into the Defender for Identity and vice versa. And that will be better for Microsoft as well to identify bad actors when working with threatening identities and devices as well. Same story is in regards to the Office 365 Threat Intelligence connection. If you have the license, always double check, but 100% I would advise to enable. Same when it comes to the Defender for Cloud app. Actually, that's a very important one. When you enable that, we can, from the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, we can actually facilitate the discovery of all the apps running on any devices, in this case to help the IT to spot shadow IT, eventually applications users shouldn't be using or shouldn't, install on the devices. We can get from that, and we can block and allow applications from the Defender for Cloud app as well. Anyway, 100% I would advise to keep this option on. The next one is the web content filtering. This is, again, when the users are surfing in different websites, especially bad websites, Microsoft has a rate to identify malicious website, and if this option is off, basically users won't be able to reach those bad websites. To maximize the security on your tenant, I would advise to keep that on as well. The next one is in regards to download the quarantine files. Sometimes, especially early on the project, if you've never done any Defender for Endpoint in that particular tenant, you might be a little bit concerned in regards to Defender for Endpoint. This tool could be blocking some good application, and then eventually, if the applications go to the quarantine and your setting doesn't allow that file to be kept for too long, maybe only for 2-3 days, and then it will be deleted, you could enable this option to allow people to download files from the quarantine. The next one is to share endpoint alerts with Microsoft Compliance Center. Again, in order to maximize all the sensors from different tools, I would advise to keep this option on. Authenticated telemetry, as you can see, the option is on. I would advise to keep it on. This is to avoid some bad actors to try to trick all the telemetry generated from the devices and going to the cloud service. The next one, 100% on, I would say, Microsoft Intune connection. That will allow us to have, I have other videos explaining, giving a better explanation about that. But in here we can, for example, set Defender for Endpoint. If there are too many alerts on my devices, my device will be set as a medium risk or high risk, and that can feed back to Intune, and then eventually with the right configuration on Intune, my device could be set as non-compliant, and then eventually not being compliant. If you have the conditional access configured as well, the user wouldn't be able to do anything from that device. I would advise to keep it on. The next one, device discovery. This is kind of interesting enough. Microsoft has investing for the last couple of years in kind of detecting and be able for us to see some information from devices, even if those devices, they are not yet enrolled into Defender for Endpoint. What I want to say is, if you keep this option on, the devices who are already enrolled into Defender for Endpoint, they are able to scan the network and then eventually bring devices that are not yet onboarded into Defender for Endpoint. And then eventually, when I click or when we click into the devices, we will see devices not onboarded, and then the status is this device can be onboarded. And eventually, when the time is right, I could onboard that. I would advise, again, unless there is anything in particular happening on your organization, but if you leave this option on, yeah, you might be surprised with some features. Let's say some devices, just running around from different networks, maybe in a not great shape when it comes to security. The next one can be a little bit tricky. Of course, when it comes to preview features, it means if I enable this switch, every time Microsoft is making anything, any preview feature available on Defender for Endpoint, I will be able to get that feature and start using it straight away. Those new features will be populated automatically into my tenant. When it comes to lab environment and POC and so on, usually is not a big headache because you are testing things anyway. But if you are managing a complex environment, an enterprise, thousands of servers, thousands of workstations, I understand some organizations, some enterprise, they are not too happy in implementing features before they are in the kind of general availability status. And some kind of organizations, they don't enable that option to make sure only general availability features are available on the tenant to be used. Okay, again, that's up to you, because my lab is just a lab environment, it's not a kind of proper production. I will keep this switch as on because I really want to kind of be able to test every single feature as soon as possible, as soon as I can put my hands on. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now let me just click and apply this configuration. I need to provide here just information about myself. And then, yeah, I will get an email as well. This is just, the basic email from my demo tenant. Okay, click on submit. Okay, that's great. Now click on OK, and then let me save preferences as well. Click in there, and then should be all good. Okay, anyway, as I said at the beginning, please make sure on my lab environment is easy. I'm not dealing with a complex environment, and I want to test everything. This is why I enable pretty much all the features. But when you are implementing on your own environment, production environment, take your time, do a bit of reading on each of those features. But based on my experience, even dealing with enterprise clients, out there, a part of the preview features, usually companies out there who wants to keep the security as in a really high level, they try to enable, they keep pretty much everything as possible as enable to elevate the security on the environment. Okay, that's done. Now let me just go over not all the options, but some of the options that I'm calling here as the initial setup. When it comes to licensing, here is just a quick way for you to double check how many licenses you have available for this tenant. In my case, and the good news is because I have Microsoft 365 E5, I'm covered. I have 20 users or 20 devices fully covered on plan 2. That's great. Next one, email notification. Again, that's depend on your organization, but can be very useful. It means every time when there is an alert on Defender for Endpoint, you want anybody from your organization, the SOC team or the security team, to be notified or not. If so, you can just click, very easy, just click on Add Item. Click in there. Here you can just decide what's the role name. Let me see, mail to the SOC team. Okay, that's fine. I want to include the organization name. I want to include the organization specific portal link as well. Include device information. Again, some organizations, they could be a little bit worried not to send via email too much information. In my case, I want whatever is getting this email to have maximum information available. Another thing you need to decide if you want to, in my case, my SOC team, to be getting email for every single alert. Maybe, that could be too much, and they really don't need to get notified when just an alert as an information happens. To keep things, let's say, and to not generate too many emails, let's say I want to allow my SOC team to receive only alerts, when emails, when high-level alerts or high-risk alerts and medium are happening on my organization. Okay, click on next, and now here is just a matter for you to provide whatever is the email of that person or the SOC department, the cybersecurity department in here, and then click next, and job done. Okay, simple enough like that. Okay, let me cancel that, that's fine. Okay, when it comes to auto remediation, I still need to set up, because this is a brand new tenant. I haven't created the groups yet. In order to create the groups and then to set the remediation, I need to set the tags, and there are some more configuration to be done. I will come back in this bit later. Okay, roles, again, this is for another video. Device group, I will come back at that later. And that's pretty much it from now. Oh no, before I go, there is a very important configuration here. Under the configuration management and then enforcement scope, let me click in there. That's very important, especially later on when you are onboarding servers and then you want to push the AV settings, the EDR settings and so on via MEM over those Windows servers. You need to enable this configuration. As the moment you can see is off. Okay, use MDE to enforce security configuration settings from MEM. And the option is, I really want that, because there are so much I can do from MEM. Okay, make sure you enable that option. Here now, there are kind of a few decisions for you to make. The first one is, if you want MEM to be able to use MDE to enforce security configuration for all devices, or you could say, yeah, you know what, for now I want MEM to apply only over I don't know, Windows 10 devices, or only some of the devices, and then you could tag devices only from the IT, or devices from, I don't know, Dublin, or maybe the only devices from Sydney, or so on. On my case, because I really have planned to onboard and to manage Windows 10, Windows 11 and all flavors from Windows servers as well, I want to make sure all the devices, including servers, they can be affected with policies I'm about to create using MEM. Okay, I will keep that in order. Okay, another option is on by default, security settings management for Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Onboard devices. Yes, I want to keep on. I have another video where we can connect Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Cloud and benefit from the Defender for Endpoint auto onboarding thanks to Defender for Cloud. Okay, please make sure to watch that video as well. And the next one, manage security settings using Configuration Manager, or the old name called System Center Configuration Manager. On my topology in here, on my the tenant I'm deploying, I don't have any Configuration Manager server. Everything is going to be managed via MEM and via Grow Policy, and then I will keep that option off. Anyway, that's a kind of important option as well. Okay, and then that's it for now. Let me click on Save. Okay, that's job done. Okay, from here. Anyway, this is for other videos, but okay, now I have the basic configuration done. I still need to configure the AV policy, the EDR policy, and so on. But when the time is right, here is the place from the onboarding. Here is the place where now I can download, if I'm about to onboard Windows 10, here's the place where I can now download the onboarding script as a local script, as Grow Policy, and so on. But don't worry too much right now. I have another video specifically where I'm covering all the details when it comes to onboarding. Okay, that's pretty much done from here. Now let me just go back to my endpoint.microsoft.com, and there are a few settings here I want to enable. Okay, that's job done. Let me just refresh this page If you can remember, at the beginning of this video, I came here to kind of establish the connection between Intune and Defender for Endpoint as well. Let me just refresh. Sometimes it takes a while in order for the connection to be established, but let's see how things go and if the connection is already enabled or not. Okay, slowly it's coming. And there are a few settings as well I want to enable, and I want to double check with you when it comes to allow onboarding of Windows 10 or iOS, Android devices, and so on. Okay, it's taking the time, should get here at any stage now. And as I was saying before, here on the left, that's going to be the next big piece of configuration, because one thing is for us to configure the backend configuration, EDR, and all of those settings I've been talking. Another important piece is when it comes to push over the devices, the AV configuration, the endpoint, the EDR configuration, so on. Anyway, good news for the moment. As you can see, the connection has been established. And then here now the synchronization between these two products is happening with the time and the date in here as well. Okay, a few configuration here for me to review. First of all, endpoint security profile settings allow Microsoft Defender for Endpoint to enforce endpoint security configuration. This option, we need to set as on. Again, if you are not too sure, before enabling on your tenant, you can always, just position here over that quick icon to get a better explanation from there. Okay, now there are a bunch of configuration here, specifically for Android, for iOS. If I want to connect Windows devices and so on, Windows devices, yes. And then to do the app synchronization with the iOS and so on. On my lab, for now, I don't have any Android or iOS yet to connect, and then I just want to kind of enable the options step by step when I need it, not enable all of them if I don't need. Anyway, that's done. Anyway, this is all what I wanted to present about the initial setup and advanced settings. I hope you enjoy. If so, please give a quick like, subscribe my channel, and get ready for the next module. Thanks for watching.